Welcome to our fifth lecture. I think it is in a connection to the fourth lecture where we have developed the recurrence relation for Kg equation applied to a charged particle under the action of a Coulombian force. In this lecture, we will solve that recurrence relation in a stepwise manner. We will impose certain physically acceptable conditions, and towards the end, we will try to see the major outcome of this. And we apply this equation to understand, to explore the spectroscopic energy levels, and as a major outcome of it we will try to see that what is the role played by relativity in the case of this Kg equation that we try to explore. So I welcome you to the second part of our fourth lecture. This is our lecture number 5. So welcome you all. So friends, let's start the new session. If you remember, what we were doing was deriving Kg equation for a particle which is under Coulombian force. Correct? And last time, if you remember, uh, we could derive the recurrence relation for finding the radial wave function of a particle. Right? So this was the last equation that we could obtain, and we made some comments regarding that knowing the previous coefficient of that series, we can get the next coefficient, and thereby the entire series can be constructed in stepwise manner. But before we jump into deriving this exact series, what we do is that let us first explore the very large k value scenario. So basically, in the language of mathematics, when k is very large, approaching infinite value, then what kind of information we draw out? That's the question we first consider. So to start with, I write again that mm, recurrence relation, though it's a repetition, but I will write it so just for the continuity. So this is the equation that we have obtained. So I'm just rewriting it, and then we'll put a limit that if your k is very large, if k is very large, so ck is corresponding to very large value of k, then what can be the case? So we try to now consider this case further. And to understand that part, I can take this k common from both denominator and the numerator. Therefore, k, if I take common, then it will be 1 plus this s plus 1 minus lambda by k, and from the denominator, from both the brackets, when I take k common, so it will be k square, it will be 1 plus 1 by k, and here it will be 2s plus 2 by k plus 1, and of course ck. Correct? And you know that this one of the k cancels out, and you are having 1k here. And obviously, since k is very large, so this terms having that k in the denominator everywhere, they will contribute to 0. So this, all the terms are negligible, and you are left with only ones in the bracket. So basically what we conclude that when k is very large, your ck plus 1, and if I bring the ck below, then it behaves as a 1 by k. This is a typical series where the consecutive coefficients of series behaves as a 1 by k when k is very large value. Based on that information, now we'll try to look for a series whose recurrence relation have the similar case. And if you just go to the, say, standard mathematical books, say like M.L. Bose, Mathematical Physics by M.L. Bose, then where you can see that a series like rho raised to p, where p is any real number, e raised to rho, then this series has the similar kind of uh, dependence of the coefficient at very large scale. So whenever your series is like this form, then the coefficient for a very large k behaves as k, where k is very large. So in our case also, since our series has this behavior similar to this, so we may be very, in the beginning, as I've said, that ultimately we are interested in finding the coefficients, and putting this coefficient we will generate the entire series and thereby the radial function. But if we use this as our solution, then the problem is that here it is rho is e raised to rho term. So this e raised to rho term, so as rho, don't forget rho is nothing but your alpha r dimensionless form. So if rho increases, then exponential term e raised to rho will also increase very rapidly. So it is basically a diverging series. And this is the problematic term. As we already discussed, that for a large value of rho, your wave function should give the zero probability. And against that, if rho is large, this series if we use, then it will be diverging. So in order to remove this deficit, in order to find a solution which is not diverging, then we have to put restrictions on the maximum value of k. So let us assume that there is some maximum value of k. If I denote that as k maximum, I may also denote it as a n dash, for example. Then let us assume that at this value of k, your ck maximum is 0. Correct? If this is the case, this I want to assume that there is some maximum allowed value of k, n dash, which I call, such that this ck is 0. And obviously we know that when ck is 0, so no need to say that ck plus 1 will be 0. If ck plus 1 will be 0, so ck plus 2 will be. So in a cycle, higher order, all coefficients will be automatically 0. So your series will now truncated, will be chopped down at a ck max value. There is no need to go for the higher terms. So basically your series converts into the polynomials of some maximum k value. Right? And that's the idea we are looking for. Now if ck maximum is 0, so in order to secure this condition, or in order to impose this condition, what we have to do, that this part should be 0, because in the denominator there is no negative sign. You can't make this term 0. So in order to make your coefficient 0, your numerator must be 0. So basically, I can say that at k maximum, which I denote as a n dash, so this numerator will be 0. And if numerator will be 0, means instead of k, if I write as n dash, then n dash plus 1 minus lambda equals to 0. And you know that this you can write as n dash plus s plus 1 lambda. So ultimately, by restricting the maximum value of k, we are in fact restricting the maximum value for the lambda. This is the condition which we are now using to prevent this divergence behavior. Right? And therefore, the allowed values of lambda will follow this rule. N dash plus s plus 1. And don't forget, n dash is nothing but representing your k value. So it is integer, which we know. Apart from this integer values, lambda also depends on s. And if you just go back and recollect the thing, your s is actually written something like this: L into L plus 1, and then there is a term like gamma square. Correct? So we know that your lambda is now not only decided by this integer value, it is also decided by the s value. This everything we have discussed in order to preserve the finiteness, basically the zero value of the wave function at a very large rho, and thereby we assume that the particle is now confined only in a nearby region to the positive charge. Another opposite condition is that what happens at the positive charge. Here positive charge itself is considered at the origin. We put our frame of reference or the coordinate system so that its origin coincides with the positive charge. So if you just recollect your figure, that this negative charge which is moving on a circular path, keeping the positive charge somewhere here at the center, then this I can consider as the origin. Correct? So this is my origin of the coordinate system. At this origin, or you can say at the positive charge, in order to have a finite value, again you can't expect this negative charge to be located at this. Otherwise, the existence of this system, stable system made up of positive and negative charge, that ceases to be observed. And therefore, we should also look for a case that when your origin or when your distance is 0 or you are at the origin, that condition actually tells you that your S should be greater than 0. It must be positive value. Otherwise, it will give the divergence value of the wave function. So now we have a two extreme. At rho tends to infinite, maximum value of k should be n dash. So your entire series will now truncate. Let us say k maximum is 5, for example. Then your series will be having only the fifth power of the rho or the r. So it is basically the fifth order polynomial. Similarly, you also impose a condition for the finiteness of the wave function, that at the origin you need a finite value of wave function that demands your S should be greater than 0. So basically, we are looking for a case where S is greater than 0 and your K maximum value will take this value which we call as the n dash. So now, in order to understand this part, I refer this equation and let me do some simplification. So I go to the next point where I start writing this equation, and you know that this is basically your quadratic equation, s square plus s. This term I open up and I bring it on the left side, everything. So what I'll have is something like this L square, and again here also I open up the bracket. So it will be L square plus L minus gamma square equals to 0. And you know that this is nothing but your some quadratic equation, ax square plus bx plus c, and therefore the solution which we look for must be like this. So I write directly this solution plus or minus square root of this 1 plus let me write directly 1 by 4. I can take this below denominator inside, then 1 plus L square plus L, and of course this gamma square. Correct? And if you consider this part together, then this is nothing but the whole square. So let me write that it is minus half plus or minus square root of this will be L plus half whole square minus gamma square. So the solution for S will be minus half plus or minus this term. Okay? In order to seek that S must be greater than 0, so out of this 2 plus or minus 2 solutions, which solution will be permissible, admissible, that we are considering the next. So with this equation, now I am finding that out of plus or minus 2 solution, which solution we will be considering. So I consider the two cases for that. When your L is greater than 0, don't forget L is your orbital angular quantum number, which takes the value like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have two choices, either L is 0 or it is greater than 0. So I discussed this part, that let us assume for the first case when your L is greater than 0. And we also know your gamma basically is written like this, Z E square by 4 pi epsilon 0 ch cut. And if I put the known values of all these quantities, then also let us assume that Z is 1. There is only one positive charge at the center. You may take more. Then this quantity comes out to be very small. So basically this gamma is very small, and therefore gamma square will be further small. And therefore the two solutions, one with the positive sign here and one with the negative sign, these two solutions I write as a S plus and S minus. Then for L greater than 0, S plus will take shape like this, minus half plus this L plus half whole square minus gamma square, right? And you know that this can be nearly equal to, because if I ignore gamma square for a moment, then it will be square root of this. So square root of this will be L plus half. So this half and this minus half cancels out, and you will find it is always L. So if this is nearly equals to L, which is already greater than 0, so your S plus solution will be positive. As against, if I consider the other case with a minus sign, and again we assume that gamma square is practically small quantity compared to this, negligible, then again I can neglect this gamma square term, and when I simplify this, what I will get is the nearly minus L, and minus, so it will be minus 1. Obviously, for any choice of L, this equation is always negative. So this is not acceptable, this is acceptable. But this is the case when L is particularly greater than 0. If you consider L itself is 0, and again gamma is like this, so for this case also I can write now S plus, and this S plus solution again like this equation gamma squared I ignore. L in our now case is 0, so it will be only half square, so minus half and plus half, so it will be exactly 0. Whereas S minus will be, if I consider again like this, it will be minus half and this will be minus half, so it will be obviously negative. So this is again neglected. So only allowed solution is with S plus. So the positive sign in between, that is allowed. So with this idea, now let me write what is the value of lambda. So lambda I can write as n dash plus S, but with a positive solution, and this one. So basically my lambda will look like this, n dash plus S, and for S I have now a solution ready. So it is L plus half whole square minus gamma square, and don't forget n dash plus there's 1 also. So we have secured that even at the origin, even at the positive charge, our solution will be finite, and that is possible only when your S is positive. So these two possibilities which I have written as S plus are now written as a permissible solution to find lambda, correct? And then I can just open up the thing, correct, and I can do some simplification. This L plus half term, if I bring out of the bracket the square root term, this 1 and minus half, they will be merged together. So what I'll have is n dash plus half plus this which I have brought out. So L plus half, correct, it comes out of the square root. What you are left within the square root is like this, gamma square upon L plus half whole square. And again, don't forget your gamma square is relatively very small quantity. So for this square root term, I can use the binomial theorem, correct? So what I'll have, and again this half and this half I can merge. So it will be n dash plus 1 plus L. Not possible now. Maybe in the next step I can do, because still it is in multiplication. Yeah. And then what I'll do, I can apply the binomial theorem. So it will be that half power will multiply here. So it will be L plus half whole square. And then L plus half, and of course there is half this. This half which I should write here. So this L plus half now I multiply. So what I will finally get is this n dash plus half, correct? This L plus half goes in, so it will be L plus half minus L plus half will cancel out one of this, so it will be gamma square upon 2 into L plus half, correct? So we have this equation, and now you can merge this 1 half and this 1 half. So it will be your n dash plus 1 plus L minus this quantity, gamma square upon 2 into L plus half. Just to write it short, this quantity n dash plus 1 plus n, in next step I will write as n only, correct? So this quantity I can write as let me go to the next page, it would be better. So this lambda is ready. So my lambda will be that, as I've said, n dash plus 1 plus L I write as n. This quantity will be as it is. So it is n minus gamma square upon 2 into L plus half. Correct? And this quantity we will be using frequently. So just not to write every time this thing. So what I do, I may write that as some number. Let us say I call it as a something like square root a. Correct. So this is I call square root a. Don't forget that lambda which we are calculating is eventually related with the energy, and the expression which we have written was 2e gamma upon ch cut alpha, and alpha was also defined. So ultimately this equation which I have written is connected with this part. So now I write the explicit form for the gamma and alpha, and then I will do some mathematics. Now onwards it's more or less a simplification. So let me do it. Correct. So this 2e gamma which I write, so 2e gamma ch cut, and for alpha square the expression was something like 4 into m0 c raised to 4 and e square. So that I write. Correct. So basically it is a 4 in a bracket m0 square c raised to 4. This is the expression for alpha square I am writing. Correct. And upon that c square h cut square, and we need alpha, so it is like this. Correct. So what we get, this 2 and this 2, ch cut and all that can be simplified. So ultimately what you will get is e gamma upon m0 square c raised to 4 minus e square raised to half. This term will only remain. Correct. And this is your lambda. And in our case, lambda means, in short, I have written as square root e. Correct. So just here it's a square root, here is also square root, so I can remove square root by squaring both sides. So what I have, e square gamma square is equal to, now when I square it, a, this term I take on other side, so it will be m0 square c raised to 4 e square. Correct. And then I can combine this e square term to find out what is the expression for e square, and then I will also take LCM. So e square can be written, what it will be, m0 c square m square c raised to 4, what comes? Okay, yeah, and then this comes in. So 1 plus gamma square by e. Correct. So I can do some manipulation to find out what is e square, and therefore finally I take square root. So to find e, square root of this I can write as m0 c square, and this term, though square root in the denominator, but I write in the numerator with a minus power. So it will be 1 plus gamma square by e raised to minus half. So my final expression for the energy is ready. Maybe some number. So you get this equation, and again, in order to simplify and in order to get a specific form, now I resort on this fact that my gamma square term is very small, and if gamma square is small compared to this a, again I can apply the binomial theorem. So I basically write this energy expression as a binomial series in the powers of this gamma square and a. But here I'll keep one term more in order to get a required form. So what I write now binomial expansion of this term m0 c square. Correct. This one, we know the first term at least, this minus power will come here, so it will be gamma square, and this 2a, but I retain one more term because I need a specific form that we are looking for, and therefore I write up to this. Higher order term I neglect, and therefore I can write this approximate value of this. It is nothing but, since a is the denominator, it is the same thing. I can write like this: 1 minus gamma square a raised to minus 1 upon 2, and this term plus 3 by 8 gamma raised to 4 a raised to minus 2. Right? So we have this equation, and only thing is that now we need to substitute this a minus and a minus 2 that is readily available. If I square it, then I have this term, correct? So from this, if I write a, it will be your n minus gamma square 2 into L plus half whole square. So my a is already ready, and that I have to use here. Correct? So I go, first I will find out what is a minus, then a minus 2, and I substitute. That's it. That's the end of the story. Correct? So I use this information. I know a is this. So I write that expression for the a. From this, if I take this n square out, this n out, it will be n square 1 minus gamma square upon that n goes in the denominator into like this, correct? And of course, this is a square term. And then if I invert it, so my a minus will be ready. It will be n square with minus power 1 minus, and again if you allow me, gamma square is small compared to all these quantities, so again I can use the binomial theorem. So this quantity can be written again using the binomial series, this 2 power, but don't forget I am inverting it. So in the first step it will be minus 2, and that minus 2 will multiply here. So what I'll have is this. So this is the binomial term which I have written after inverting. Don't forget, otherwise it will cause the sign problem. So obviously my expression for a minus is ready. It is n raised to minus 2 1 plus gamma square by n into this, and if I square it, so obviously it will give me the expression for e raised to minus 2. So it will be 1, but as I have kept 2 here. Now I have to put the 4, so it will be something like this: 2 gamma square upon this 2 is I have cancel out, so it will be n into L plus half. Correct? So basically a minus 2 and a minus 1 are ready. So this information I will substitute here. So the final expression for the energy will be ready very shortly. So let me do that last step, and then we are on. See, in all this topic, initially it is always a little mathematically involved. You have to derive such equations, but I think once you do it your own, I think it's a fun doing, and it's a very simple stepwise mathematics. So there is nothing difficult, but yes, indeed you have to cultivate that taste of simplifying the things. Anyway, so I just go on putting the value of a minus, correct? So if I write first term m0 c square 1 minus this gamma square by 2 will be as it is, and for a minus I will write this information, correct? So that's the substitution I do first. So 1 minus gamma square 2, and that n raised to minus 2 I write as n square in the denominator. What we have in a bracket, it is 1, what it is, gamma square upon n into this. So sorry, gamma square upon n into L plus half. Correct? So this is the substitution for a minus. And similarly, in the second term, 3 by 8 gamma raised to 4 will be as it is, and for a minus I will write this. Again, this n raised to minus 4 I will write in the denominator. So my last term will be 3 by 8 gamma raised to 4 upon n raised to 4 in a bracket 1 plus 2 gamma square upon n into L plus half. So we have this expression that I will now use to simplify. That's it. So I open up this bracket 1 minus, when I open up this, so first term gamma square by 2n square, and here when I open up it will be gamma raised to 4 2n cube L plus half. This, if I open up, it will be 3 gamma raised to 4 1, so it is 8n raised to 4, and then we'll have a term gamma raised to 6 and n raised to 5, correct? But I think it is not needed because gamma square, as we have already realized, is a very small. Gamma raised to 4 is indeed very small but important. So gamma raised to 6 term we can neglect. So this higher order term gamma raised to 6 upon n raised to 5 and L plus half, that I am not writing. Correct? So we have this expression, and you know that these two terms both have the gamma raised to 4, so it allows us to take something common. Only thing is that now here n raised to 4 and here it is n cube. So what I do, I multiply here by n, I divide by n, so it will make the common n raised to 4 term in the denominator. So finally my expression for the E will be ready. This term I keep retain as it is. Correct? And this, what I do, I can take now even 2 common, n raised to 4 common, and gamma raised to 4 common. So gamma raised to 4 upon 2 n raised to 4. And then what I'll have, this term, if I write first, correct, it is positive, so I may write it first. Then what I'll have, this 3 by 4, this everything is gone. This term is negative. 1n is still there, so it is n upon 2 is gone, so it is only L plus half. So my expression for energy will be ready. This is my final expression on which we can now discuss the outcome. Correct? So we are in a position to write this thing. All these terms which we have derived are for a fact that your series representing a particle interacting through Coulombian force should be found only in the vicinity of the positive charge. So finiteness of the wave function at origin as well as at the very large value is being ensured. All these terms are now telling something interesting. Let us first consider the first term, m0 c squared. This term, m0 c square, is nothing but your relativistic rest mass energy. Is already known to you. It is the relativistic rest mass energy of a particle who is interacting through Coulombian force. The second term, along with this m0 c square and this m0 c square gamma square upon 2n square, that is nothing but your similar to your non-relativistic energy of the hydrogen atom. Don't forget, your gamma is something like z, if you remember, z is square by 4 pi epsilon ch cut, and if I put this value, c square will cancel out, and m0 and all. So basically this is like your hydrogen atom in the case of non-relativistic, yes, hydrogen atom energy. And if you remember your lower standard, that energy varies as a 1 by n square. So in that regard, this you may call as the principal quantum number. And you know that n comes because of if you remember, it is something like your n dash plus 1 plus L. Correct? So basically, all these physical quantities n dash 1 and L are the integers. So your principal quantum number is integer. And the lowest possible value for L equals to 0 and n dash is also 0, it is 1. So 1 corresponds to the ground state. So when n is 1, it represents the ground state. N is 2, it is the first accelerated, and so on and so forth. So this term is similar to the non-relativistic term of the problem where the positive and negative charges are interacting through Coulombian force. The last and third term is now made up of the two parts, correct? This term and this part. But jointly, if I write this term, the third term, that actually represents the relativistic correction to all this energy. Whatever energy we get in the case of non-relativistic part, it will be now slightly modified. It will be slightly corrected using this last term. Correct? So this term I may call as the relativistic correction. And it is found that compared to this first two terms, the third term is usually small in magnitude. So compared to this term, first term and second term, the third term is relatively small. It's a small quantity. So it is only providing a small correction to this major contribution. And we know from our ordinary perturbation theory that whenever small interaction is causing the slight modification in the energy, then we call that as the perturbative term or the perturbative correction. So this relativity or the relativistic term provides basically the perturbation. It's the third term which perturbs your non-relativistic case. So there are some books who also derive this concept without going in such involved mathematics. They simply write that first two terms which are already known, non-relativistic case, whose energy eigenvalues are already known, and then using this relativistic term as the perturbation, then they slightly modified this concept. So basically this entire discussion can also be can also be derived using the concept of the perturbation term. Okay, now what is the outcome of this? If this behaves as a small correction, so small something we can write in the language of spectroscopy is known as a fine structure. So this term, the relativistic term, is causing a slight modification, slight shifting of the energy level, and that's what we call as a fine structure. So this gross behavior of the first two terms is now being fine tuned by the relativistic perturbation. Okay? Based on that, let us try to derive the what you call, so the energy level diagram or the spectroscopy that we try to infer. And for that, let me go to the next page where we can show the energy level diagram. Correct? For that, let us assume the vertical axis is your energy level diagram, energies. So what happens if I let me write that expression again so we can feel it. That expression for the energy reads like this: m0 c square, it is 1 minus gamma square by 2n square plus gamma raised to 4 by 2n raised to 4, and that 3 by 4 minus n upon L plus half. Okay? If you just look at the first term, first two terms, this part, which corresponds to the non-relativistic case, correct? So I divide my this energy level diagram into two parts, correct? Here I write, say, n, don't forget, is your principal quantum number. So this represents my ground state corresponding to n equals to 1. Then I have n equals to 2, that is my first excited state. And then I have n equals to 3, which is my second excited states, and so on and so forth. So corresponding to this, if I draw the energy level diagram, in the case of non-relativistic derivation, then this gives me some particular value for ground state energy. When I go to the first excited state, it will give some energy level like this. Third, and like this. There is no need to explain. You already know that as n increases, because of the denominator n square term or n raised to 4 term, the consecutive and the higher energy levels come close to each other. And there is some higher values of n where the energy level merges to each other and forms the continuum. So as I go to the very large value of, then what I'll have is continuum, where the energy levels are merged. That practically corresponds to very large value, correct? So basically this discrete energy states are already available from the non-relativistic case. But now we know in the case of relativity, so when I use this KG equation, relativistic equation, then your n, which is written as n dash plus L plus 1, now this L is appearing explicitly in this term. So depending on the different choices of L, this term will be different, and thereby this term, which we have called the relativistic correction, that will be different for the different L value. Even though your n is same, but if L is different, then the relativistic correction to those states with the different L will be different. But we know that for n equals to 1, your L is always 0, and therefore now corresponding to n, your L is always 0. So if you write L 0, then it depends only on n. There is no L dependency. But still this term, which depends on n, changes this non-relativistic part. This is non-relativistic part. So that changes to slightly lower level. Okay? So still n is 1, but your energy level is no longer the same as in the case of non-relativistic. It is now been decreased by some value. Correct? So basically your energy level gets shifted. They are changing their value by small amount. But if I go to this higher level where n equals to 2, and you know that when n is 2, then L can take two different values. L can be 0 or L can be even 1 also. So depending on the type of system, your energy level of course gets shifted, but it will also show the two different contribution to two values of L, and therefore for each L value, energy shifting will be different. So what we have is like this. Right? So apart from the original value, it is shifted, but this shifting, as I've said, is different for different choices of L. So this is only the shifting of the energy level. Here both shifting and splitting happens. And you know that this is nothing new for us, because we have already discussed in the course of the perturbation theory, the role of perturbation is to remove the degeneracy. Non-relativistic case is always degenerate with respect to the L. When you apply the relativistic correction as a perturbation, this L degeneracy is removed, meaning for a different L value, now energy levels are different. They will show the different shifting and different values, so the splitting is also observed. No need to say, if I go to the n equals to 3, which corresponds to three values of L, 0, 1 and 2, then of course this shifting will be there, but apart from shifting, now there is a splitting as well. So L now takes this value. Correct? So from original, now energy levels are shifted. So this we can understand even when we consider the relativity as a perturbation. This fine structure has been observed for the different atomic and different uh, molecular systems, that indeed the energy levels are showing L dependency. There are famous experiments who are showing such shifting and the splitting. So indeed the relativity is playing a role in developing and understanding the energy levels more accurately. Uh, as if you recollect, in the beginning of this particular topic, our intention is to apply the Kg equation to the particle which is interacting through Coulombian force. And I propose that uh, up till that we were knowing Kg equation, that it's a relativistic equation applicable to many particle system. But that's not the only information we get out of this. After doing all this exercise and after going through this mathematics, we are now in a position to make a more firm conclusion, and we can draw the more important outcome of the Kg equation. So let me write certain things about the importance of the Kg equation. First point, no need to say that it is the equation applicable to many particle systems. So basically your Kg equation is many particle equation, or the system, it is applicable to such system who have a many particle. And in that also we have said that it should be made up of the two types of charges. And as a two types of charges we can think of, say, it is the assembly of the like a particles and antiparticles with respect to their charges. So this many particle system should have the mixed type of charges. And such a many particle system, as we were referring to, is also known as the field. So basically it is your relativistic field theory. Second important outcome is observed here. The relativistic equation when we solve, then we conclude that looking to this particular aspect of the spectra, that energy levels are shifting and energy levels are splitting. So it basically removes the degeneracy with respect to L. So what we say, that relativity acts as a perturbation. So another important outcome that one can draw is that it works as a perturbation. As an outcome of this perturbative nature, what happens? It removes the L degeneracy. So this is the interesting thing, that it is capable of splitting the energy levels based on the values of L. Third point, which is in fact negative to the theory, is that I have not purposefully said, if you just remember and recall, I never said that I am applying the case to hydrogen atom. What I have shown only is that there is a positive charge and a negative charge which is revolving around this positive charge. But if this negative charge is your electron, if this is your the nucleus and it constitutes the, say, hydrogen atom, this is your electron, then for hydrogen atom, when I try to derive such energy levels, try to understand such shifting and splitting of the energy levels using Kg energy, the energy broadening is found to be almost half to what we observe experimentally. So this splitting and shifting is not coinciding with the experimental observation for the case of hydrogen atom. But instead of that, in particle physics and nuclear physics, you come across a similar kind of system, similar kind of arrangement, where, instead of electron, central positive charge is there. Negative charge is not electron, but if it is say a meson, negatively charged meson, like pi minus, for example. Then for this case, again the interaction is Coulombian interaction. Everything is same. Complete derivation is same. So if I find, this is known as a mesonic atom, for example. So if I now calculate the energy levels of this pi or mesonic atom, all shifting and splitting matches coincides exactly with the experimental observation. So this is something very interesting outcome, that here also positive negative charge is interacting, here also positive negative charge interacting, entire geometry is same, interaction is same, mathematics is same, but for hydrogen atom that energy broadening is not observed accurately, whereas for the Masonic atom it is the same. So this energy broadening, when we observe for hydrogen atom and for Masonic atom using KG theory, this fails to explain the case of hydrogen atom, whereas for this it can explain accurately and coincides with the experimental observation. So obviously now scientists are thinking that what's the difference here? Both are having the same nature. Then they found that electron is basically, we will learn more about the such a particle when we employ the Dirac theory, the next part. This electron is basically your fermion, where this meson is basically the boson. So Kg equation is unable to explain regarding the energy levels, energy spectra of the fermionic system, but for bosonic system it is valid. So third important outcome of this Kg equation, relativistic field equation, that it is applicable to bosonic system. Indirectly, it is saying that fermionic system cannot be dealt accurately with this. So this is one of the failure of the Kg equation, that whenever you are dealing with the positive and negative charges made up of fermions, then such equation will not be valid. And we know, at least from our lower standard, some basic understanding is that the difference between fermion and boson is regarding their spin value. So basically, these bosons who are having the integer spins, like either 0 spin or 1 spin or 2 in the steps of H cut, whereas the fermionic systems have the half H cut multiples, like half H cut or say 3 by 2 H cut and so on and so forth, then we conclude that the Kg equation is valid for the bosonic system but fails to fermionic system. So spin half particles cannot be dealt with the Kg equation, whereas the integer spins like S is equals to 0 or 1 or like this in steps of H cut, then this are been dealt accurately. So this is all about Kg equation. Firstly, if you remember, we have derived only for a free particle, and then as we have included the interaction, simplest example of interaction through the Coulombian force, that interaction has given up the entire energy level and the role of relativity as a perturbation. And an outcome of this, we have further inferred that the fermionic system cannot be dealt accurately using the Kg equation. But nevertheless, you can't, the use of Kg equation is are many, and the people in the high energy particle physics, they do use this Kg equation, but only for the bosonic system. But whenever you are having the fermionic part, then you must go for the next, that is the Dirac equation. So basically we have the two, as I was mentioning in the beginning, that the nature has only two types of particles, bosonic and fermionic, and now we have at hand, at our disposal, the two mathematical framework. One, the KG equation, which deals with the bosonic system, one part of the particles, and second is the fermionic system, which is been taken care by the Dirac equation. So in the next part, we will go in the same sequence. First, we will derive the Dirac equation, and then for a free particle, and then we will include the interaction in it in order to investigate fully the concepts of Dirac equation. So I stop here with this KG part, KG equation, relativistic KG equation, and then next we will move to Dirac equations. Thank you. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture. I think this is the lecture where, apart from mathematics, towards the end we have also discussed the actual physics of or the applications of this KT equation, how spectroscopy is been can be considered accurately using the concept of relativity, how the energy level gets splitted, how energy levels are shifted, and major outcome of this KT equation is that the relativity is actually working as a perturbation. So this is very important outcome that can be explored and that can be further extended. So that we will try to see in the next lecture. If you have any queries and doubts, obviously you can comment in the comment section, and obviously you have liked or if you have liked this lecture, you can subscribe and share and like this lecture series. But don't forget to join in the next lecture. Welcome to the next lecture.